Greetings, fellow scribes! Welcome back to the archive. This week, I continue my short series on notable locations in Rokugan by talking about the southernmost border of the Emerald Empire, the Great Carpenter Wall, also called the Great Kaiu Wall, and the Kaiu Miracle. This Great Wall is the only thing that separates the main portion of Rokugan from the blasted wastes of the Shadowlands to the south. So sit back, relax, and enjoy as we talk about the wall that is the crab. The current Carpenter Wall is not the first Great Wall. The first wall that the crab had built runs south of Shiroharuma, or ran south of Shiroharuma. It was destroyed when an Oni called the Maw led a massive force of Oni, broke through it, seized Haruma Castle, and continued north. The crab were fighting a fighting withdrawal the whole time, and they reached an area called the Sago River. This river, the area where it was flowing along, was a natural choke point, but also, once you went past that, if the Oni had gotten past that point, they would have just been able to spread out into Rokugan itself. Nothing could have stopped them. And so, the Sago River became known as the River of the Last Stand after this. The crab were fighting, and they needed to build something, but they didn't have time. Any attempts to start building fortifications, Oni would have attacked them. So they needed a way to buy time. This is when one of the great heroes of the Crab Clan steps forward. Kuni Osaku. She's a young Kuni Shugenja, and she tells the Crab Champion at the time that she can give him 60 days. If he can build a wall in that time, she can give him 60 days. And he accepts her offer, not knowing what's going to happen. Kuni Osaku goes up to the river and invokes the kami of it. And the river rises into a wall over 100 feet tall. Its raging waters stopping any Oni from crossing it. And she gets older each day. While she is maintaining this spell, the crab, Kaiu, begin to organize. They call in every owed favor from the other clans, asking for help to build this fortification. And they begin work. It is the resources of an entire clan, plus whatever they can pull from outside, focused in one small region. And Kuni Osaku didn't give them 60 days. She gave them 73. By the time they finished the wall, this first section, she had died of old age. And the spell ended. But the Oni were faced with an impregnable wall in front of them, 100 feet tall, and they hit on it like a great tide and were eventually destroyed and defeated. The maw itself, its head and especially jaws, were taken, stripped of their flesh, consecrated, and mounted over the gate of Kudenhida. And from that point, the Great Wall was created. It's never not been under work, however. You see, the mistake with the first Great Wall was it was built and then, yes, the work is done. The Great Carpenter Wall is never not being worked on. It is constantly being refined, improved, widened, strengthened, what have you. The wall itself is 100 feet tall, 30 yards wide. And every 50 yards, there are strong points with 50 to 100 bushi and siege engines, plus their crews. Across the length of the tower, there are 12 great towers, around which small towns pop up to supply the samurai in those. And these towers, there's 12 of them, and they're spaced fairly evenly. Though one of the towers, the 6th tower, the Tower of Fear, was utterly corrupted by Fu Lang and the Shadowlands taint. It could never be cleaned and cleansed. So what the crab did is they separated it from the wall, built around it, and built a new tower in its place. And one of the other more notable towers is the Tower of Waste. It's on the eastern end of the Great Carpenter Wall, far away from any real dangers. And it's where the crabs send their, how shall we say, less desirable elements. The discipline problems, the drunkards, the ones who constantly insubordinate, the ones caught sleeping on duty or consistently late to their guard shifts. It is the dregs, and it gets supplied about as well as you would expect. Just enough to be able to perform its duty, not a bit more. Meanwhile, the tower that was corrupted by Fu Lang is called the Tower of Fear. And it stands as a reminder of the price of failure, because it is visible to a huge chunk of the Great Carpenter Wall. Now, this is what is above the wall. This is the upper portion. The lower portion goes hundreds of feet underground, is what it said. In fact, it is filled with traps, dead ends, and various other unpleasantness. This underground portion is where Haruma scouts going into the Shadowlands come out. And it's also where any sallies out into the Shadowlands, out into the area where the demons are, come out. Anyone going through this is led by a Kaiu guard. The Kaiu are very reluctant to let anyone else know the secrets of how to get through the wall. And it makes sense. If the Kaiu gave someone the directions how to get through, and that person is captured by Oni, the Oni can torture that person eventually to get that information, or use dark magics to pry that information out. So, from a security perspective, it makes sense. On top of that, there's one other little element. The Kaiu are always changing the layout underground and through the passages in the main portion of the wall itself. They're reinforcing, expanding, building dirty tricks in. If there aren't demons around, if there aren't Oni around, they're making forays out past the wall to build extra stuff, to build things to delay Oni, to create better kill zones, etc., etc. The wall is never finished. It is always being refined, focused, built. Because if it's not, well, you never know when another The Maw will show up. Now, during the Destroyer War, the wall was actually breached. And by breached, I mean it fell. The destroyers got through at one point. And what happened was Haruma was fighting a demon called a Rakshasa, one of the things from the Ivory Kingdoms that was leading the destroyers. And he had made sure the Crab Champion had escaped, because it was necessary for what was going to happen. The wall couldn't hold, but the crab had to survive, so the champion had to live. And this Haruma, fighting this Rakshasa, blew up a section of the Great Carpenter Wall. He had it loaded with Gaijin pepper, aka gunpowder, that was also littered with jade. And he set it off. Killed him. Really injured the Rakshasa. Didn't kill it, but did force it to not want to do much after that. And as the destroyers flooded into Rokugan, the crab took the blame for their failure. The Crab Champion, having survived, had the Jade Champion do some special enchantments onto his armor. Because his plan was for his own seppuku. Because he had to commit seppuku. He had to die for the honor of his clan. And this great crab champion rushed into the midst of destroyers that were besieging Kyuden-hida. And he fought them. He went in with a honor guard of the damned. A crab who have been tainted, but are still able to fight for themselves. And so the crab champion went in with an honor guard of the damned, so that they could die in battle as well, bravely defending the crab. When the last of his bodyguard were dead, the crab champion continued fighting until his wounds were too great, and then the enchantments put onto his armor triggered and detonated him into the midst of the destroyers. Understand that Kyuden-hida did not fall in the Destroyer War. The destroyers tried to take it, laid siege to it for a bit, and then moved on. So, in a way, it was the great insult to the crab. They lost their wall. They would eventually rebuild the wall, by the way. They lost their wall, and they were essentially told their great family castle wasn't worth taking and holding. Note, it was sieged for several months, but the destroyers moved on. And that is the story of the Great Carpenter Wall. I hope you enjoyed that. Next week, I talk about Kyuden-Kakita, the home of the Kakita Dueling Academy and the Kakita Artisan School. So until then, I'd like you all to remember to have fun and keep gaming.